Welcome, capital raisers. Thanks for your patience. We've been busy raising money. Today, we have Paul Montelongo on to talk shop on the scaling of a syndication business, the learning of capital raising, and the habits you need to implement to be a successful entrepreneur. Are you guys ready to raise? Shout out to Invest Next, our investor portal of choice, to Capitalist Pro, and of course, the Family Office Club, which is the largest association in the capital raising industry with over 4,000 ultra wealthy investors globally. With that, it's Capital Raiser Show episode 310, and it starts now. Rock and roll. I got Paul Montelongo on the Capital Raiser Show. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good, Ruben. How about yourself? You said my name correctly.
Montelongo.
Montelongo. Like I was telling you before the show, it's Spanish unless you owe me rent, and then it's Italian.
Yeah, you make it sound more Italian than Spanish.
Doesn't it?
That's
Forget about it.
hilarious. Capital Raiser Show Season 4 brought to you and powered by our friends at Family Office Club and our new sponsors at Invest Next. So, Paul, tell us a little bit about your background, man. How did you get into real estate and syndicating and developing self-storage and stuff like that out in San Antonio?
I am from a real estate family and construction family. Growing up as a kid, we worked in the summers, lugging roof, lugging trash, doing deliveries, those kinds of things. And then at the age of 17, my father said, go out and buy property, go out and buy real estate. So I bought a piece of land. I bought a little bitty, tiny pie-shaped piece of land in a residential area. Bought it with money that I'd saved up over the summer, $7,500. I thought I was going to build a house, sell it, make a whole bunch of money. But at the age of 17, come on, I don't know how to build a house. So 2 years later, I sold it. And I sold it for $15,000. So I doubled my money. And that's when I got the taste of the blood. By the way, those profits, I did exactly what you're supposed to do with your real estate profits. I did not reinvest them. I bought a truck and a motorcycle. So that put me on my path. And then in my early 20s, I was buying properties, flips, single families and flips. And then I'd spent quite a few years doing that, construction, and had an insurance restoration business, et cetera. And then in 2013, someone called me and they asked me if I wanted to buy a marina. And I said, no. I had no clue how to operate a marina, how to buy a marina. I'd never even owned a boat. In fact, I've still never owned a boat. But anyway, I did all the due diligence. And one day I woke up with 115 boats. We had 115 boat slips. We also had 38 tiny homes on the property. This property generated 13 pathways of revenue. And that's when it really made sense to me that one transaction, multiple streams of revenue, multiple checks coming into your mailbox on a monthly basis just made a whole lot of business sense. And I had a very extensive business background. That's why I was invited into this property in the first place. The thing that I was missing, though, was capital raising. On that one project, we were supposed to raise $1.4 million. I thought I could pick up my phone, call my friends, and to my dismay, no one invested because they didn't know me from that space. They knew me from other businesses and other spaces. I had not developed any kind of credibility in a multi-unit space. I met a gentleman, was introduced to a gentleman. In 9 days, he raised the $1.4 million. And then that's when I had another level of understanding. And that's the power of capital raising and the power of syndication and the power of networking with people, offering them an opportunity to multiply their money while we did all the work. So that put me on the path of buying apartment complexes, other multi-unit type properties. And as you mentioned at the front of the show, now we're developing self-storage from the ground up. Same business model. We do the work and investors park their investment for a certain amount of time. Then we give them returns. So that's now we are true blue, legit capital raisers.
Okay, who's on your team right now?
Our company is comprised of myself, my wife, and then two business partners from Austin. I live in San Antonio. They're an hour away. We've done multiple deals together, and we decided that we were going to pool our talents together and partner. So we have, and then we also have a marketing person, and then we have other affiliated individuals that are not necessarily on payroll, but they take an active role in our business. For example, lender brokers, insurance brokers, property management. We are in-house on asset management, and we are in-house on construction management. So our team is about 6 or 7 people. And then we, of course, we have all the affiliated people that work with us.
Okay, cool. And then the 6 or 7 people, do you foresee that it needs to get any bigger than that, or are you pretty
Yes.
happy?
Yeah. So one of the things that we experienced in 2023 was really big growing pains. Out of my frustration, I was in a moment of despair, and I called a man that mentors me, and I'm like, dude, I can't deal with this. There's just too many irons in the fire.
I know
And he
that
said, you
feeling.
got to get your business organized, which sounds pretty simple, the advice. And he recommended a book called The EOS System. It's called
Mm,
Traction. And I read that book. Now, that book's been around. In fact, it was in my library. My wife had it in her library, and I never paid attention to it. I absorbed it, and I'm like, oh, and then all the lights went on. So we hired one of their coaches. We're going through the EOS process right now. It gave us such clarity because, first of all, it deals with your values and who you are as a group and who you are as individuals and what you bring to your business in terms of values. And then from that, as you may know, it drills down into, okay, the roles and the seats and who can fill those seats and matching them all up. And so even though we've only been actually implementing that plan for about 3 months, I feel such a weight of the workload off. And I know that my other partners and teammates do as well, because they were feeling the same thing. And that's why we made the move. So we're happy with that. We're looking forward to our 10-year plan and implementing it. And if you're going to be in business, period, not just this business, if you're going to be in business, you got to be organized. You got to have a plan. You got to have a direction. And we just grew too fast to think about organization. But then once we backed up, we've already seen tremendous results from being organized.
Phenomenal. Yeah, I think this is one of the topics that doesn't get people don't dive into it at the level it requires, because a lot of syndicators think I'll just be the GP and I'll take down properties, and they don't realize that they have to manage people and grow and scale the business. I'm very curious about diving a little bit deeper into this. What have been some of the growing pains other than having too many irons in the fire? Because I've just recently scaled a business from like about 2 people and one virtual assistant to like a 10-person organization, and we experienced tremendous growing pains. So I want to
Yeah.
see if you can kind of elaborate a little bit on that.
So I got to a point where I'm like, I shouldn't be doing that shit. In the roles that are clarified in the book, I would fill the role known as the visionary. That's the individual that goes out and finds the new opportunities and creates the lay of the land for the business. And it's not that the other people in the team can't do that. It's just that there is more specificity in that role. And so I found myself doing just like silly stuff, sending out OMs and replying to emails. And then the other thing was the duplication. So someone would do something and I would do something. And then we found out, okay, it's duplicated. And those two things didn't match the way that we saw them. That kind of stuff I saw as real time wasters. And it took me away from the thing that I love to do, which is go out and find deals and find capital. That clarity is what helped freed us up, because the duplication and the lack of everybody knowing what they were doing with clarity was a real energy drain to us. Seriously, physically, I feel better. It's not that I felt horrible before, but physically, I feel better from just being organized, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's go backwards a little bit, back in time. You mentioned the Marina, the enlightenment of the process of syndication and capital raising, and a couple of things that kind of propelled you on your journey. So when you got into the Marina, you mentioned 13 streams of income. Just before we get into the syndication of the multifamily part real quick, what were those 13, or give me a couple of those that were less common?
Sure. This was 14 acres of property, and there were 115 boat slips. So you had the boat slips, you had a boat club, you had a boat rental program. Obviously, the 38 tiny homes, we were an Airbnb superhost. Events, there was a pool, so we had a membership club. It was an Olympic pool, and we had a membership club. There was a warehouse, so we had some storage in the warehouse. And then we had enough land to do ground storage, and then special events that we would outsource. So all of those things that at one time totaled up to 13 streams of revenue. And they just kind of, I was talking to somebody this morning and I was telling them a story, and those were not all of those were, in fact, only 2 of them were part of the business plan, the tiny homes and the boat slips. So those other things came as a result of people asking us to do more and us looking for opportunities on the property to generate more income, which we did.
Do you by chance still have this, Marina?
I do not. I sold my position in it in 2018. I did well. I'm out.
Sounds like an amazing learning experience.
It was
Tell
a
me,
tremendous learning
I
experience. Yeah.
bet. I mean, like all of the organization of the parties or banquets or
Right.
events,
Right.
that's a
Right.
business in itself, I'm sure. I know some people that have started their own kind of banquet hall, and that's a whole different monster.
Yeah. So again, you get clear on. So it was the hospitality business and it was the entertainment business. Yes, there were boat slips, and yes, there were monthly checks from the rentals of the slips and so forth. But to a large extent, it was the hospitality business, which I'm not a big fan of after having been through it. But that is the model that we used at the time.
Okay, and then so your partner or friend raised $1.4 million in 9 days, you said? That's pretty amazing. So what did you pick up from that? And I'm very curious about how you started implementing what he did so that you
Right.
could start raising capital yourself.
Well, so when I asked him how in the world did he do that, he's like, well, this didn't just happen over 9 days.
Right.
So this happened over a number of years. And the majority of the people that he brought in were from the tech industry and from the Silicon Valley, from which he came. He was a techie before he was an investor, a real estate investor. And so he just carried all those relationships forward. Those other people had been in deals with this gentleman. They had been in successful deals. And so when he saw our opportunity, he figured it would be a natural segue over to his database. So what I learned from that is two things. Number one, I couldn't just pick up the phone and call my people because my people did not know me in this space. I had to educate them. I had to demonstrate longevity. I had to demonstrate my credibility in this space. Now, they knew that I was a decent businessman, but they didn't know me in this realm. So that was the first thing. Just go through the process and let people know the industry that you're in and establish credibility in that industry. Secondly, was build your database, build your network of contacts, people that can provide capital for your investments, and just continue to communicate with them and build them and prime them and work with them and build relationships with them. And then after a while, then the momentum picks up and you're able to raise for your own projects and bigger projects.
So as you're doing these two things simultaneously, the educating, the nurturing, and the building of your database, what kind of conversations did you start having? It's one thing to educate and nurture over social media. Were you doing all of this educating over the phone or in person or on social media? What was your approach there?
Well, in the beginning, a lot of it was in person. I mean, by over the phone. Okay. So sometimes I meet in person, but more often, much more often, it'd be by phone. We had a new investor come in yesterday on a deal that we have as a referral from someone. He's just an LP investor. And I sent him an email immediately. I'm like, thank you. Congratulations. We appreciate you coming in. And I like to meet with all of our investors by phone to get to know you. So now we have a phone call set up for Monday. I want them to hear my voice. I want to hear their voice. I want to hear their background, their history, where they're from. I think there's an exchange of confidence there. So the answer to your question is picking up the phone and calling, shoot a text, and you're just like, hey, I just want to get to know you a little bit better. It's a very non-offensive conversation. It's like, hey, Ruben, I hear you from Phoenix. How's it going? Well, it can be a 10-minute conversation and then you're out. That little bitty personal touch goes so far. It goes a long way. In fact, the person that I just spoke to that I have a conversation with on Monday came from as a referral from another investor that we picked up the phone and we called and we said, hey, how are you? So now, can you do that when you have 3, 4, 5,000 investors in your database? I don't know, but I do think that you can have an investor relation team. You can have an investor relation department, if you will. You can certainly communicate via email and newsletters and share videos on all of our properties and all of our property reports to our investors. I do the videos. And so they see I do it along with someone on our team, either my wife or our asset manager or one of our partners, because I think they need to see the face. I believe it. I enjoy it. And I think that they need to see the face.
That's absolutely true. Okay, cool. And then what about on the building of your network? I mean, particularly for the aspiring capital raiser, someone who's getting into the business that may not have all the tech investors or people in that circle. How did you start to build your database?
I eventually did go back to my Rolodex. I've had some people invest from my Rolodex, but for the most part, it's been networking. We go to so many shows, we go to so many conferences, we go to so many meetups, we join masterminds, we join retreats, we hold our own retreat. We're actively in the business. We're not on the sidelines looking in, we're on the field playing. So when you do that, you get an awareness of who's out there, has capital and can raise capital, as well as you get the credibility of being in the game, on the field. This is not new to me. In every business that I've done in the past, here's the difference. In every business that I've done in the past, it was self-funded. So this was my money. So this is the first time when I started into the syndication business that I was using other people's money. So I was afraid to ask for that. That's probably why I didn't raise any money, because I didn't ask with confidence, because I had no track record. So now that I have a track record, now that I can speak with confidence, the capital comes much quicker, much easier. And I would say that that's the point that I would pass along to anyone who's in the capital raising business or who wants to get into capital raising business. Just plant your flag, do the work, build the relationships, and give people value, and do what the hell you say you're going to do. Just that's that. I don't know if it gets any more fundamental than that.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned you had cycled through 1,300 and you currently have about 1,000 units. Tell us about have they all been in San Antonio or Texas?
No,
What
no,
are
no,
the
no.
markets that you like?
So North Carolina, Georgia, let me see the places I've invested. North Carolina, Georgia, several product places in north of Atlanta, Mississippi, Texas, Kansas, and Las Vegas. I've not been out to your zip code, your area code yet. What is the area code? 603 or something? I've not been out there.
Phone is 602. We're in the
602.
8500s on the zip code.
Yeah. So I haven't been out there, but those are the key areas that and right now we are only in Texas and Kansas, Wichita, Kansas specifically. We see that as a market that we like. It's got some growth. There's some good growth, good statistics, and it's not one of these supermarkets that people are fighting to get into, but the returns are as
There's a
good.
ton of competition in
Yeah.
the bigger markets for sure. What was the investor response on having assets all over the country, or as you were raising for these different deals and partnering up with boots on the ground and managing that stuff? How was that? Because it sounds like you condensed down to a couple of major markets that you like, but
Yes.
what was the investor response like? Hey, like, why North Carolina, or why Mississippi, or why north of Atlanta?
That's the question that I always ask first when I'm doing any kind of presentation, because that's the question I asked myself. When someone brought me a deal in Wichita, Kansas, my first response was literally, I'm not exaggerating, what the hell is in Kansas? Am I going to be faced with tornadoes? Am I going to see the Wizard of Oz? So, but then the presentation was made to me about the metrics and the fundamentals. So my first approach was an emotional approach. It's like, why this place? And by the way, people that are going to invest with you, they're going to have an emotional response first. They're not going to, I don't believe they have a digital response first. They have an emotional response first. That emotional response might be, well, this is my money. How am I going to get to protect it? What are people going to think of me when I invest in a place? Who are you? So these are emotional responses. Okay, so I had an emotional response and I got the question answered with digital information. These are the metrics. This is the rent growth. This is the variation in industry, et cetera, all of the things that we look for as owner operators to substantiate, to verify a market. So in all conversations, regardless of what a person tells you or how they respond to you, know that that first response is an emotional response. They have a concern that they want resolved in their head so that they can go back and prove it with data. Now, that also is, we're going off into a master course here now, Ruben. That also is dependent on the personality type of an individual. You come across somebody like yourself or myself, and they present us with an opportunity to invest. Our first question is, how the hell do I make a lot of money on it? Okay, by the way, that is an emotional response, because that money does a lot for us: freedom, opportunity, creativity, etc. So that is an emotional. You have someone that's more analytical, they'll have an emotional response, but they'll want to get to the digital framework of it more quickly. You pay attention to the way people communicate and the way people respond to you, then you move into your presentation based on their personality style. It's been my experience.
Fascinating. Okay, so you've condensed down. Actually, before we talk about that, I'm curious, these different people that were presenting you with the data and the information, I'm gathering that you weren't the owner operator on some of these, or you're partnering or raising capital for them, or what was your role in this? Because you sound like an
No,
owner operator today.
these would be like either deal finders or brokers because
Oh,
I'm the
gotcha.
owner operator. A deal finder would come to me and he'd go, "Hey, we think Wichita, Kansas is great." I'd be like, "Okay, you're going to have to prove it." Which, by the way, once the information was presented to me, I took it at face value and then I went and continued to prove it myself with the metrics that I have come to know that work in a market. That's how that process went.
Okay, cool. And then you condensed down to a couple of markets. Why did you do that versus having the different deals all scattered in different locations?
Go back to our earlier conversation where we had so many plates spinning.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the plates that was spinning was all of these markets around the country that we didn't have a presence in. And as we've grown in our business, we see the need to be more hands-on in our properties. And it's not that we haven't been, but we see the need to be even more hands-on, especially that I'm the guarantor of all of these loans and everything. So I need to be more hands-on as we build out our team and as we build out our company and grow our company. We're seeing that we can train and educate and bring along other people to help us do that. But that was the real impetus behind it. And so we're now located only in Central Texas. So we have deals in San Antonio, Corpus Christi, Austin, and then we go up the Interstate 35 corridor to Wichita, Kansas. So everything is along the north-south Interstate 35 corridor. Not that we wouldn't go a little bit off to the east or the west because it still makes geographical sense. But for the time being, that's where we'll focus. Now, if we were to come across a deal where there were a really good set of boots on the ground in a market that we knew, that we trusted, that we could depend on, then we sure would take another look at that. We'd look at those markets. That's where we are now.
Okay, cool. So I want to pick your brain a little bit about your relationship with your mentor. So who and how did you establish getting a mentor that kind of guides you? Tell me about that relationship.
So this first gentleman that invested in the Marina, like he never said sign up for my mentoring program. It wasn't that kind of mentor.
Mhm.
It was a man that I trusted, actually a younger man than myself. And I could call him and I could run by business problems and business situations, not just with that property, but with other ones. And then he did teach me the logistics of capital raising and the logistics of syndication and those kinds of things. So I consider him a mentor. And then another man that was a partner on that deal also mentored me. And then they put me on to somebody else. So these guys just said, "Hey, listen," they would introduce me here. Paul is a businessman. Paul has invested with us in these properties. And I just want to make the introduction. And so once I got the introduction, I would just say, let's say you were one of the men. "Hey, Ruben, tell me about how you got where you are." And what I want to know really is I want to know your mindset. I want to know what's between your ears. I want to know what makes you think you're entitled to do something like that. That's where I like to go because the logistics part of it, you're going to figure out. But the mindset part of it, it's like what gives you the right to think that you can raise 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, et cetera.
Yeah, I want to dive into that actually right before we get into the lightning round. So you said speak with confidence, be in a position of confidence. You talked about not only just trusting you as a person, but trusting you as a business person in the deal. When it comes to confidence, I kind of want to dive into the relationship that has with self-esteem. Is this something that, because if you do a successful deal, that gives you an incredible amount of confidence, but some people fear that the raising capital part, like they're not capable. And part of that issues from self-esteem. In fact, I was reading a book by a local mentor here, Renee Cermak, and she's talking about your relationship with yourself is reflected in your bank account. Whatever you have in your bank account, that's your relationship with money. And she talks about self-esteem at a great deal. Tell me about that part of it.
Self esteem can be learned, self esteem can be exercised, and it comes from confidence. And confidence comes from one thing, as far as I can tell, and that's doing shit. Like you just have to get off the couch and go do stuff. And you're going to fail and you're going to fall down and you're going to scrape your knees and you've got to get back up. And then once you get back up and you learn a little bit different way or you tweak it, that gives you confidence to get back up again. And then once you actually do something, that gives you confidence. I do think that in order to continue to grow in confidence, you have to be make yourself uncomfortable. You have to make yourself uncomfortable in a variety of ways, emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally. You just have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. It happens to me. When I became aware of this, I started choosing consciously uncomfortable situations to test myself. And there's always more out there that can make you uncomfortable. I don't think a life of comfort is the thing that makes humans feel satisfied. So I think a life of discomfort, and I don't mean pain and agony and torture, just feeling out of your skin in situations. If I had my choices, I could probably just be a lone wolf and go live in a cabin in the mountain and be just a happy-go-lucky guy. But I don't think that would give me the fulfillment of life that I'm after. I think the challenge on the daily challenge is what brings real fulfillment. So you have to put yourself in situations that challenge you daily. Raising capital. So asking somebody for $100,000, that was a heck of a challenge in the day. So then when I asked somebody for $1 million, that was a heck of a challenge. So I have a meeting on Friday where I'm going to be asking somebody for $15 million. That's a heck of a challenge. How it will go, I don't know, but I think I'm prepared for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of confidence comes from preparation.
Right.
Sure.
And so I don't think it's artificial. I think it's exercised. Confidence is. And then in turn, and the two work together, in turn, it builds your self-esteem, it builds your self-value, your self-worth, which then promotes more confidence. And then here we are, we're off to the races.
Fantastic stuff. All right, man, let's dive into the lightning round. My first question to you is, what is the best vacation you've ever taken?
The best vacation that I have ever taken was, I went to Maui 4 years ago, and I married my wife. And so we were there for a week, and it was fabulous. So I'm going to put that at the top of the list. And I'm sure if she hears this, she'll love me even more for saying that. Individually, before we married, I went to New Zealand. I went to New Zealand for 11 days. Went all up and down New Zealand and sailed on an America's Cup yacht and danced with the Maui tribe members. And that was a pretty cool vacation.
Incredible. Yeah. Favorite book of any kind?
Well, I'm a voracious reader. And currently, I'm going to go with the current. Currently, I'm reading a book called 11 Rings. And so 11 Rings is the story of Phil Jackson and how he coached the Chicago Bulls and the Los Angeles Lakers and won all those championships. This is the second time I've been through this book, and I'm reading it for a very specific reason, because to me, it's a book on spiritual leadership and the elements of spiritual leadership and how you inspire and motivate other people around you to get the most out of themselves from a spiritual perspective. And so I love that book, and I'll probably read it again.
Cool. How much of your success do you attribute to mindset?
About 99.999999%. The other percent is just the effort. Because without the real estate between your ears being correct, you're not even going to get off the couch. So, and I use that metaphorically, but mindset is everything. Because I listen to a lot of shows and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and everybody is, get your mind right, get your mindset right. Listen, we're human. If your mind isn't screwed up every once in a while, I don't think you're human. At least that's not the human experience in its fullest measure. I think your mind has to be a little jumbled sometimes so that you go through the effort to make it right and to get it right and to expand and grow. Mindset, I believe, is everything.
I can dig it. How long do you want to live?
110 years old.
Best way to raise capital from your perspective? Short answer on that.
Relationships.
What is a capital raising mistake that you see people doing?
Not starting soon enough. Not connecting with people. Like going in right away and go, hey, Ruben, you got $1 million? And I barely know you.
Yeah.
So
I get messages from people just like, hey, we talked last year. Would you like to be a co-GP? I'm just like, I don't know you that well. Yeah. It's funny. How about this question? What would you need in order to 10X your business?
I would need a capital partner that would have $100 million that we could trust each other to go out and let us execute our plan, and they would reap the benefits financially from the investment.
Okay, so I got to ask about this because I've been doing hot yoga myself. What do you love best about doing Bikram hot yoga?
Again, it challenges me. So when I first started doing yoga 16 years ago, I did it for the physical relief because my body was in pain. And then After a couple of years, I started reading and studying and examining the spiritual benefits of it. I've actually been to an ashram for 30 days and studied all the elements of the history of yoga. So it's a physical practice, yes, but it's a very spiritual practice to me.
Yeah, I'm very curious about some of the other parts of yoga. Have you ever heard of yoga nidra?
Oh yeah, it's relaxation, sleeping type yoga. Very, very meditative, deep resting type yoga. I think I've done them all. I've done Ashtanga. I'm actually certified and trained in Vinyasa. As I told you before the show, I've logged in over 3,000 classes. And I don't have the typical yoga guy body, that's for sure. I'm a big guy. That doesn't stop me. There's no excuse. Just like the meditative benefits, the physical benefits. I can tell you with certainty that I have avoided 3 knee surgeries and 1 back surgery.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed, you got to go get a knee replacement, et cetera. You got to get a disc fused and all that. And I'm like, let me try this. And so I'm perfectly healthy.
It's the best for soft tissue for sure. That's all the blood.
Flexibility. Yeah, all of that. I could go on with that.
No, I could probably talk to you about it because I'm interested in kind of what your experience with Kundalini yoga is.
Oh yeah, actually my Kundalini experience, very minimal. I've only been to a handful of classes, but they were led by the instructors that dress in white with the white turbans.
Yes, I've done that.
Yeah, that was part of it. I checked it off the list. Let's say that.
All right, 2 more questions. Have you ever experienced a miracle or had a near-death experience?
Miracles, yes. Miracles, yes. And that's a matter of perspective, but miracles, yes. I've never had a near-death experience that I'm aware of. But I think my life story and my life history has been, first of all, it's mine. And it has presented to me numerous challenges from childhood to here. And so I think the miracle that I'm actually alive and the miracle that I'm here at a pretty centered place in my life at this point is pretty good evidence of miracles.
Yeah, that's the answer I'm typically seeking is, do you think life itself is a miracle? I mean, the fact that you're experiencing consciousness floating around a little blue bubble in mostly empty space, I mean, it's a huge miracle. Our last question of the day brought to you by Shen Amigo, one of our great listeners. She would like to know, what impact would you like to leave in the world?
It's real simple. When whoever delivers my eulogy, they'll say, that was a good guy. He was a good guy. And they'll be able to say that by the things that I did for other people. So I have a lot that I do on the earth, and I have a lot that I do for other people. But at the end of the day, the legacy would be, that's a good man. And he squeezed everything out of that life. He went from wire to wire.
That's fantastic. Great answers on the lightning round. Love that part of the show. Shout out to the Capital Raiser Nation. Thanks for tuning in. Please leave us a 5-star written review, and shout out to our sponsors, the Family Office Club and Invest Next. All right. So how does the audience get a hold of you, Paul?
Anything Paul Montelongo on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, at Paul Montelongo, just like it sounds, and then MontelongoCapital.com. MontelongoCapital.com. There are ways to reach out to me. There are ways to set an appointment on my calendar. Very active on social media and do a lot of training and inspirational work on social media as well as real estate related work. So please join in the conversation on social media.
Good stuff. Any last words of wisdom for the aspiring capital raiser or syndicator as they scale on their journey?
Just start. I have no regrets in life, but if I could look back and tweak 1 or 2 things, it would be start earlier and just put yourself out there and good things will happen. No bad thing ever happened to someone who was persistent and relentless.
Good stuff, man. So it was nice meeting you at the Family Office Club back in Phoenix in October of 2023. Really good getting to know you a little bit better on the show as well, man. Thanks for coming on, man. This has been a blast.
Yeah, good job.